Hello, and welcome to the next entry in the Andy Warhol diary in the old Razzle Dazzle. This is your pal Mubbo, and today we're going to be looking at Wednesday, December 22nd, 1976. But before we jump into that, of course, we have some housekeeping to look at. The first one is if you have any information in the murder of my Uncle Charles Pancheri. He was killed in his home in 2011 in his house in Elizabeth, New Jersey. He was found dead in his kitchen from stab wounds. They think that it might have been a robbery gone wrong, but there are no leads, there's no information. Nobody's ever been brought to justice. So if you have any information, you've heard something, saw something, somebody said something, please call 908-654-TIPS. That's 908-654-TIPS. Or you can go to their website, www.uctip.org. www.uctip, so that's unioncountytip.org. Thank you very much. Next thing is, if you would like to read along with us in a virtual version of the diary, you can go to this website. It doesn't always work. So if the website doesn't work, just go to Google and search Andy Warhol Diary. And once you get to this page, you want to go right down here where it says full text. And just go to today's date, which is Wednesday, December 22nd, 1976. So today, Andy was picked up by car to be photographed for a project by Merce Cunningham to help drum up publicity for the event. Merce, or Mercy, was born as Mercier Philip Cunningham in the state of Washington. He was a choreographer and dancer. He frequently worked and collaborated with artists outside of the dance world, like painters, visual artists, architects, and musicians, such as Andy Warhol, Brian Eno, Jasper Johns, and John Cage. In 1974, Andy created 2 screen prints of Cunningham done on Japanese gift wrapping paper. And this may have been the event that Andy was going to be photographed to promote. And if you'd like to read about this, you can go right here to this website. Andy was being photographed at his office, and photographers from Newsweek and other outlets were there. The photographers told Andy they would take him home via the hired car after the pictures, but they seemed to have sent the car away after getting what they wanted from Andy, so he walked back home. Later that afternoon, baby Jane Holzier and her hair dropped off a gray kitten that was going to be a Christmas present from Holzier's son Rusty to Mick and Bianca Jagger's daughter, Jade Jagger. Andy agreed to keep the kitty at his place until Christmas. Now, baby Jane Holzier, we've talked about a couple of times. She was an art collector and socialite and former it girl, and she was one of the original Warhol superstars. Jane's son, Rusty, born as Charles, is an equestrian who represented the Virgin Islands in the 1992 Summer Olympics. He and his wife currently run a philanthropic foundation which promotes equestrian programs and athletics. As for the Jaggers, we talk about Mick and Bianca a few times now, but one person we haven't talked about very much is Jade Jagger. Jade was born in 1971, and her full name is Jade Sheena Jezebel Jagger. She is currently a jewelry designer in the UK. In the early 2000s, Jade designed an accessory piece called the Jagger Dagger. It was a sword with an 18-karat gold hilt decorated with diamonds, sapphires, and blue lapis lazuli. In 2009, Jade designed a ribbon bracelet that was featured in Observer Women's Magazine. And she created the bracelet out of household items, and this is now a very popular DIY jewelry project with instructions on how to make them and how to personalize them. And if you can't figure out how to make this on your own, you can watch a video tutorial done by Jade herself. You can also go to her website and see her wares. There were no bracelets listed on the website, but you can see some of the other items that she has right here at jadejagger.com. I wanted to see the ribbon bracelets because I wanted to know how much she was charging for them. But apparently it's just a DIY, and you just take whatever you have like laying around, a lot of safety pins and charms and that kind of thing, and you just make it yourself. Later on, Jed Johnson drove himself and Andy over to Peter and Sandy Brant's house in Connecticut. Now, Jed, as we know, that was Andy Warhol's life partner, and he also did a lot of driving for Andy. Here he is right here. He was also an interior designer. The Brants were involved in Andy's Interview magazine, and they purchased the magazine in 1989. They also managed Brant Publications, which had some other art magazine titles in their portfolio. Sandy was formerly an international editor for the Vanity Fair magazine. After Peter and Sandra's divorce, Peter married Axl Rose's ex-girlfriend, supermodel Stephanie Seymour, but they ultimately divorced in 2009. The Brants had 5 children, and one of them, Ryan, founded the company Take-Two Interactive, which owns 3 major publishing labels: Rockstar Games, 2K, and Zynga. Now, I know GTA 6 has just come out, and I haven't heard much about it yet. I've heard some complaints about the premium content being put behind a paywall and how you can't buy the game in the traditional sense. I haven't seen anything in actual gameplay, but GTA 5 remains one of my favorite games. It is absolutely revolutionary and very, very fun to play. And just fun if you want to, work off some steam with no consequences. As for the other 2 game publishing houses owned by Take-Two, we have 2K, which put out the unbelievably beautiful and immersive BioShock franchise, and then Zynga, which specializes in mobile games like Farmville. Unfortunately, Ryan passed away from cardiac arrest caused by aspiration, so he choked on something, or he somehow blocked his airway, and the blockage caused his heart to fail. The house that Andy and Jed were driving to in Connecticut is known as the White Birch Farm. It's an estate with over 200 acres and was modeled on George Washington's Mount Vernon home. Jed did some upgrades in the design in the mid-'80s, and it also had a polo club on the grounds. So here's one of Jed's designs. And then you can read more about that house here in the New York Times and Town and Country magazine. Back in the diary, Philip Johnson and David Whitney were also at the Brant house. Philip Johnson was an American architect who designed modern and postmodern architecture. By the way, the difference between modern and postmodern is that modern follows truth and seriousness, but draws a definitive line between fine art and pop culture. Postmodern blurs those cultural lines. It's more ironic, sarcastic, and self-aware. Postmodernism started in the 1950s, and its popularity ran through the 1970s. Basically, most modern art and architecture was before World War II, and postmodernism came to the scene after World War II. David Whitney was the life partner of Philip Johnson for 45 years. David was an American art curator, and he pretty much kept a low profile and wasn't widely known outside of the art world. David and Philip met when David attended a lecture at Brown University, and afterwards he asked for a tour of the glass house, which is this one right here. This right here. Very, very famous design by Philip Johnson. David and Philip moved in together after Philip graduated college. David staged many exhibitions for artists at his gallery like Twombley, Jasper Johns, Willem de Kooning, and many, many others. David was also an early member of the Andy Warhol Art Authentication Board, which is exactly what it sounds like. It was a board that was formed to determine the authenticity of Andy's works after Andy passed away. Andy mentions that David and Philip were leaving the following day for San Simeon to see some Hearst and look at some California architecture. San Simeon, from the map here, you can see is a bit south of Monterey. And this is just for a reference, of course. The Hearst family, which is where they were heading off to see some of the Hearst buildings and things. They're a dynasty worth over $22.4 billion, and most of their money came from media and real estate. The family started out in the late 19th century, where it earned a fortune in the mining industry and then expanded to publishing and broadcasting. Now, we can't talk about the Hearst without mentioning a very infamous member of the Hearst family, and that was Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst was kidnapped in 1974 by the Symbionese Liberation Army, also known as the SLA. She ended up being essayed and threatened with death, and ultimately joined their movement. She also changed her name to Tanya. She was arrested 19 months after being abducted, and at the time she was considered a fugitive and wanted for very serious crimes. She was convicted for the crime of bank robbery and sentenced to 35 years. That sentence was later reduced to 7 years, and her sentence was commuted by then-President Jimmy Carter. Patty then received a full pardon from President Bill Clinton. And if you're interested, there are plenty of films and TV movies you can watch. A few of them are listed here about this very interesting time in history. So they're heading off to the California to see some Hearst properties and things like that. So we could take a quick peek into the Hearst Castle. This home has 115 rooms in the main house with guest houses and 8 acres of gardens. If you want to see where it is on the map, it's going to be... So here they are in San Simeon, and the Hearst Castle is like right here. And it's just a typical castle. I mean, you think of the word castle and what comes to mind. It's pretty much that. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Back in the diary, Andy had Chinese food at the Brant house in Greenwich, and he said it wasn't that good. He mentions that someone named Bunty Armstrong had started using her society teeth. Now, Bunty Armstrong was actually Whitney Armstrong, and she was married to the former director of the Whitney Art Museum, Tom Armstrong. Andy might have been referring to Bunty's false teeth, as maybe she wore these teeth for special occasions. After dinner, they exchanged some Christmas gifts. It was 3 days before Christmas. Andy gave Sandy Brant a 1904 desk set. He didn't say who the designer was, so here's some generic pictures of desk sets from around that time. Jed gave Sandy a Fulper pot, and Sandy gave Jed one back. Andy then corrects himself and said that Jed actually gave Sandy a Van Briggle, and the pot she gave Jed was better than the one that Jed gave her. The Van Briggle pottery was inspired by the Chinese Ming Dynasty and are still a highly sought-after collectible. Fulper pottery is made in beautiful Flemington, New Jersey. It's known for its innovative multicolored glazes and distinctive vase and lamp shapes. Andy notes that guest Joe Allen didn't bring his girlfriend Jenny. Joe Allen, we've mentioned him before. He bought some shares of Andy's Interview magazine and had his then-wife Barbara work at the magazine so that she would have something to do. Joe is Peter Brant's cousin, and they jointly own Brant Allen Industries, which is a newsprint company. Andy got the impression that Joe didn't bring his girlfriend as he was still in love with his ex-wife Barbara, who is right here. Apparently, Barbara dislocated her back while sleeping, and that's why she didn't come to the dinner. Andy made a joke that they were trying to figure out if she hurt her back while sleeping with someone else and who that person could be. Andy mentioned that Peter Brant was walking around with a cane as he suffered an injury when a horse fell on top of him. I couldn't find anything about this particular injury, but Peter did suffer an injury in 2016 from a painful fall where he tore his quadriceps tendon. At the time of this writing, Peter hadn't built the racetrack and polo grounds at his Greenwich home, but he must have mentioned it at some point as Andy seemed knowledgeable about this plan at the dinner. And that's really it for this diary entry. According to this, I did look for Barbara Allen's back injury record, and AI says there is no public record or credible report, so maybe she's lying, or maybe she just didn't want to come. You never know, but she seemed to have recovered from that. So that's it for this diary entry. We're going to do this day in history. This day in history, the FCC, that is the Federal Communications Commission, was ordered to give refunds to more than 7.5 million users for improper fees charged since 1970. The FCC acknowledged that it would need to refund part of the $4 fees, but not sure if all the users would be receiving refunds. The Supreme Court found the fees exceeded the value of the services provided, and it was more like an unconstitutional tax. And if you'd like to read the whole article, here's a New York Times article that you can read the whole thing about. And that's it for this diary entry. I thank you very much. As always, we're going to end on the question screen like any good PowerPoint presentation. And I thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. MUBBO.